you have not only the New Testament writings, but you have Clement of Rome and Polycarp, both of whom probably knew the disciples Peter and John respectively, and they say that the disciples were saying that Jesus had been raised from the dead and had appeared to them. That's pretty cool stuff.
Great. So we got. And then, very interesting, outside the Bible, we have some writings by people who themselves were students of the apostles. Tell us about that, because this is very interesting confirmation.
Well, there's some really neat things. There's these two guys. One's named Clement of Rome. There are two Clements that we know of in the early church, Clement of Rome and Clement of Alexandria.
There was Bob Clement, too, but that's a whole different, that's an apocryphal thing. Yeah, Bob Clement, I don't trust him. So you got two.
Yep.
Okay.
Clement of Alexandria, he's writing in the end of the second, beginning of the third century. But Clement of Rome was writing at the end of the first century. And in fact, an increasing number of scholars are thinking that he may have written prior to the fall of Jerusalem in 70.
Wow.
Yeah, even Clayton Jefford of the Jesus Seminar gives 8 arguments for why Clement of Rome wrote somewhere between, say, 65 and 69 AD.
Wow, so this is real early stuff. Now, what's important about him? Why would he have special knowledge?
Well, because we have multiple testimonies from the early church that says that Clement of Rome was pretty much mentored or discipled by the Apostle Peter. So, if that's the case, then what Clement writes is very interesting. He is as close to Peter, pretty much, as Mark, the Gospel of Mark, who's writing the memoirs of Peter.
Wow.
And so what's really neat is if Paul, let's say, was teaching heresy, then we would expect Clement of Rome to chide and correct Paul on it. Instead, what we find Clement of Rome saying about Paul, he places him on par with his mentor Peter, and he says that Paul, and I quote, accurately and reliably taught the message of truth. So this is another confirmation that shows what Paul says in Galatians 2, that the disciples had endorsed what he had been teaching. This is outside corroboration that Paul indeed was doing this, that he was teaching what the Jerusalem apostles were teaching.
Pretty
cool stuff.
Great stuff. And Clement also wrote a letter, didn't he, in the first century, affirming the conviction of the apostles that they'd encountered the resurrected Jesus. And of course, he was personally mentored by, as you said, by Peter. Now, your mentor was Dr. Gary Habermas, and you spent years studying with him and listening to him, being taught by him. And if I were to ask you, what does he believe? You could tell me with great confidence.
Absolutely.
Just as Clement, having been mentored and discipled by Peter, would know what Peter was teaching. And he confirms, yes, he encountered the resurrected Jesus. And then tell us about Polycarp. Similar story.
Well, Polycarp was probably a disciple of the Apostle John. And he says that he refers to the blessed Paul. He quotes from Paul's writings twice, refers to them as part of the sacred scriptures. Again, that's something you don't do if Paul was teaching heresy. It's precisely the kind of thing you say if Paul was teaching what the Jerusalem apostles were teaching. But he talks about the resurrection of Jesus. And so, you have not only the New Testament writings, but you have Clement of Rome and Polycarp, both of whom probably knew the disciples Peter and John respectively, and they say that the disciples were saying that Jesus had been raised from the dead and had appeared to them. That's pretty cool stuff.
Great, so we got